The 2022 NFL Draft just days away, and we've been taking a deep dive with several experts on what's going to happen over in Las Vegas next week. And joining us right now is the senior NFL reporter and managing editor of the Draft Network, Carmen Vitali. And Carmen, I know that this draft class, there's been much to talk about. Is there any one specific thing you think is the hallmark of this 2022 class?
Well, I think it might be the lack of, rather than something that it's a very deep class. We've seen that because of the COVID year. There's a lot of guys that kind of elected to go back into college, and now they're coming out. So it's you're going to be able to get some starting talent into the third, fourth rounds even. But I think you've seen a lack of quarterbacks, and you've seen a lot of quarterback needy teams. We saw this crazy free agency carousel of quarterbacks and people shifting around, and honestly, some quarterbacks that maybe weren't thought of as notable starters that are now starting for teams or being looked to start for teams because of the fact that this draft isn't really that strong as far as the quarterback class goes.
Yeah, it's a very interesting crop of guys, and the Vikings have the 12th pick here in the first round. A lot of back and forth with several reports coming out recently that this front office is interested in moving out of the 12th spot and picking up some draft capital. How likely is it that the Vikings might take a step back after or get out of that 12th spot?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, the Vikings already have 8 picks, is it?
Yeah.
That's a healthy amount of draft capital as far as I'm concerned. And I think that this is a solid team that needs a few upgrades here and there, but it's not like they're entering necessarily a rebuild or anything like that where you would need an influx of capital this year. If you could pick up maybe for next year's and stuff like that, I think that that's maybe a conversation worth having. But as far as right now, 12 is such a good position. As far as what the needs are, I feel like for the Vikings, you need some cornerback help, even some wide receiver help to help take some pressure and some attention off of JJ. And that's such a good spot to nab a really, really good talent at one of those positions, especially.
Yeah, the 12th pick hasn't been in the Vikings haven't had a 12th pick since 2015, so it has been a while since they've been in such good position, or at least in the top 15. So a lot of mock drafts right now are saying that Derek Stingley is a hot name for coming here to Minnesota. I know that you personally have gone down to Baton Rouge. You were at his pro day. We may not have as much film, obviously, in the last couple of seasons because of injury. You were able to see him in person. What did you like about Derek Stingley?
I mean, he's just a freak athlete. There's no other way to put it. And I don't think that there were any concerns as far as his athletic ability went from any of the scouts I talked to, any of the coaches I talked to. They know what he is, and he solidified that at his pro day. He ran a 4.37 40, according to the LSU timers, of course, which usually college timers are a little bit more lenient and a little bit more positive as far as their own prospects go. But that being said, I mean, he looked so fluid in any of the field work that he did. He did every single drill. I mean, his vertical was great. He would have ranked in the top 10 as far as cornerbacks go at the NFL scouting combine in every major test had he participated and had those same numbers. That being said, I think that the concerns with him are more intangible. You look to him, his first year, which was his breakout season at LSU, his first season, played as a true freshman, started as a true freshman. He had a really good supporting cast. He was on defense, but he had an offense that was completely in command of that team. You had Joe Burrow, you had Jamar Chase, and you didn't have to do a lot as far as lead a team from the defensive side of the ball because you had those leaders already. Mm-hmm. And then I think a lot of people look to him his second year to be able to become that leader once those guys departed, and you didn't really see that out of him. And unfortunately, that's not something that can be answered at a pro day. It's not something that can be answered even in the pre-draft process or in training camp. You're just going to have to kind of let this guy develop. And actually, that's why I was just on with Texas A&M radio talking at the top of the draft. And I mentioned that I think Stingley would be awesome for in the Vikings system just because he's got a fellow LSU corner in Patrick Peterson that he can kind of bring him along and provide that mentorship to him and kind of pass the torch a little bit. And I think that he would respond really well to the tutelage of someone like Patrick Peterson because, he's a pro's pro. I actually worked with him in Arizona when I was an intern for the Cardinals. I was a game day intern for the Cardinals in college. And that was, I'm dating myself, but that was Pat's rookie year. But just, from then on, he's just been a pro's pro. So I think that
Definitely.
if Derek Stingley goes to the right place, he could be a phenomenal talent in this league. And I think that Minnesota would be one of the right places.
Yeah, it might be a good fit, but do you see, or what do you see the Vikings doing with the 12th pick?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's always the trade out possibility, especially if you can get future capital down the road, maybe not just even for this season for this year. But I really like that cornerback because I think that that's something that's a huge need. And then, of course, you've got the receiving talent. And the only thing about the receivers, though, is that I think this is a very deep draft for receivers. It's a very deep draft anyway, like we talked about. But I think you can get a starting talent that can complement the receivers that you guys already have, into the second and the third rounds. Maybe you don't need to spend a second round pick on that, or a first round pick on that, rather, the 12th overall pick on that. So I interior offensive line, that right guard spot's a little bit more in flux for you guys. I think that there's some really good interior offensive linemen that are going to be available at that spot. And I don't think that's too rich. I think we're seeing a shift that, people prioritize tackles, but I think, especially with defensive tackles and what they're able to do these days, I think that a lot of teams are placing a lot of emphasis on the offensive interior, the offensive line interior, and taking, a guard, a center, someone that can play those interior spots isn't too rich in the first round anymore.
It really is a joker card at this point as to what this team is doing, considering such big needs at the top of the order. So you mentioned receiver, you mentioned cornerback, interior offensive lineman. Is there any other position you think the Vikings could get some value from, maybe on like day 2 and day 3 of the draft?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, we're talking about how deep this class is and you're going to be able to get these starters. I think at any of those, while I said that those positions could go in the first round, you could just as easily get those positions later on. You've got a guy like Kobe Bryant out of Cincinnati, the cornerback, and he's going to be a really good player. He could be an impact starter right away. He went against top talent at Cincinnati. I know Cincinnati's not the biggest school, but they go against the biggest schools, and so he's been tested and he's done well in those instances. Even my guy, I'm a little biased, but there's Chase Lucas out of Arizona State. That's my undergrad. I love seeing my Arizona State guys. You can get kind of some corners down the line that, 4th, 5th round even, and that interior offensive line too. I'm a huge Cole Strange fan because I'm a huge small school offensive line person. Being with the Bucs for so long, I saw that experiment, if you will, work firsthand for a bunch of guys, including the recently retired Ali Marpet, Alex Kappa, who just got a new big contract with the Bengals. He came out of Humboldt State and turned into a bona fide, really solid NFL starter. So I think that these guys, you can find these diamonds in the rough at those smaller schools. And even Cam Jurgens out of Nebraska, which is a bigger school, but he's kind of down the line a little bit further. But I just learned yesterday, has his own beef jerky line. So if that doesn't propel him up draft boards, it's called beef jerky. And it was the best thing I've learned this entire pre-draft process.
They're all entrepreneurs now. They all got to have their own side hustles, right?
They do. And a beef jerky brand for an offensive lineman is just tracks so hard.
Very on brand. We love to see it. But look, you are so right though. It's so much fun. This time of year, it makes it almost more fun to see some of these guys go in later rounds and have the shot that maybe the hype didn't give them a chance out of high school or out of college. So it's always fun to watch. We'll have a close eye on that for sure. But thank you so much, Carmen Vitali with the Draft Network, for joining us today. Here, thanks to Microsoft Teams for this NFL Draft Preview one-on-one. It all gets going on Thursday night.